Grief is Rotting Your Teeth. The Shrouds was written and directed by David Cronenberg, who's had quite the prolific film career going all the way back to the 70s, where he did films like Rabid, and then moved on to the 80s, where he did The Brood. No, not to be confused with the Gangrel, Edge, and Christian trio that really didn't last all that long on WWF television. I mean, take a look at it. Gangrel was out of the group very, very early on. They didn't even get a chance to be like the Fabulous Freebirds. Anybody that's not a wrestling fan has no fucking idea what I'm talking about. Nevertheless, David Cronenberg also did films like Scanners, Videodrome, the remake of The Fly. Ooh, that's disgusting. I may retro-review that at some point and shock you with my opinions, my varied opinions on The Fly. He also did Crash, Cronenberg, not The Fly, as hilarious as that would have been to have seen a melting fly talk about Crash, and also A History of Violence, as well as Crimes of the Future. And this involves Vincent Cassel, who is in Brotherhood of the Wolf, The Crimson Rivers, and is a terrific, tremendously talented actor. I will watch just about anything he's been in. He is so good, has such great range. He's great at doing action. He's great at doing drama. He really is talented. He plays a man named Karsh, who is dealing with the loss of his wife, Becca, played by Diane Kruger. I would be upset if I lost Diane Kruger also. Have you seen Diane Kruger recently? She is almost 50 and looks 25. It is fucking incredible. She's great. She's talented. She's also absolutely fucking stunningly gorgeous. That being said, in the aftermath of losing his wife Becca, he has a restaurant that is actually in the middle of a cemetery. And this particular cemetery, the Shrouds, basically... they're grave sites, obviously, at a cemetery, but unique grave sites with video screens where you can actually watch your loved one decompose gradually as a therapeutic thing, or because people are kind of sick freaks and into necrophilia, or whatever. Maybe it was the wish for you to watch your loved one, or your loved one to have you watch them rot away after you basically just didn't do anything. You did this to me, you bastard! It's a bit of an odd premise, so it's fitting that David Cronenberg would be involved in this. And then we see other characters introduced, such as the sister of Becca, Terry, also played by Diane Kruger, who can pull off any hairstyle I do want to say. And then after a certain incident occurs at the cemetery, some weirdness starts to occur, and it becomes obvious that maybe some people are not happy with this technology being used for these grave sites for whatever reason. Maybe it's a vast conspiracy. Maybe it hits close to home. It's really hard to tell. Okay, it's actually not really that hard to tell. That is one criticism I have of this movie immediately. It is very fucking predictable. It's also almost 2 hours long and probably has enough material for about 90 goddamn minutes. And while I enjoyed some of Cronenberg's movies, this does kind of give me vibes of Crimes of the Future. Now, there's no Leah Seydoux in this, or Seydoux, or however you say that. There's no her, but there is Diane Kruger. And I like this more than Crimes of the Future, I will say that much, because that would just seem to be more about body horror and not really having a lot to say. I don't think that movie had a really great message, or any message. I think Cronenberg kind of just lost the plot, but it looked fancy. It was well shot. This actually has a decent enough premise at first, but then unfortunately spins its fucking wheels and really starts to lose steam in the second half and in the third act, when they just exposition dump like crazy. It is actually astonishing how many layers they try to add to this story, when really you peel one layer back and there's your story right there, laying in front of you like you just peeled off a layer of rice paper. It's a movie that ends up sounding about as half smart and philosophical as it really thinks it is. It just doesn't have enough meat on its bones. Ironic for a movie about decomposing bodies. I did enjoy Guy Pearce. He was fine in this. I will say that he's had better roles, but he definitely, made the most of his role here, even if he seemed to also be spinning his wheels. I did like Sandrine Holt, who is in Terminator Genesis, who's apparently also a fucking immortal because she's in her early 50s and looks great. There's Elizabeth Saunders. There's Jennifer Dale. Not to be confused with the Pitbull song, Dale. And really, it's just about Karsh trying to investigate what happened to these gravesites, including the one for his wife, and then secrets get revealed about these various characters. It's not what I would call a great movie. It's not even what I would call a good movie. It starts out actually well enough and interesting enough. I just don't think that Cronenberg knew how to advance the story. And yes, it's about dealing with grief. A whole lot of movies that I've watched even just this year in general deal with like grief and some manifestation of horror, psychological horror or whatever. And that's fine, but it becomes obvious where it's going, and then the twisty-turny stuff that they try to do, to justify this almost 2-hour runtime with not enough material to carry them. We're like, oh shit, we need to pack on more stuff. We need to pack on this. We need to pack on that. The opportunity gained to, sleep with Diane Kruger. I mean, who would turn that down? I mean, seriously, with respect, who would turn that down? But that's not enough to carry this movie anything beyond, it's alright. It just ends up being alright. There are people that absolutely love this, people that absolutely hated this. Where do you guys fall? Let me know in the comments. I'm going to get into spoilers. It's on Amazon for a few bucks. If you want to check it out, 3, 2, 1, spoilers. So, we open up with Vincent, or Karsh rather, staring in at his wife's grave. Oh, I see. It's okay when, a guy stares in at a woman's grave and everything and watches her body, but when I do it, I'm asked to leave the cemetery. And he's getting his teeth inspected. Obviously, the grief is eating at him. Grief is rotting your teeth because grief can manifest and cause a whole lot of issues. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff quickly because it doesn't really... Despite them including a whole lot of stuff, at least the first act sort of justifies things. But it's really just about Karsh dealing with a bunch of grief. He does have an interesting relationship with his former sister. Well, actually, his sister-in-law. But Becca died, so he talks to Terry, and Terry's a dog groomer and stuff like that. There's also this talk of a Chinese tech company that helps, develop these shrouds that allow you to watch the body decompose through these screens and stuff like that. But then the grave sites end up getting basically uprooted, including Becca's and everything, and all this stuff's going on, and a few other particular ones where things are not going all that well. And what the fuck is happening? Tragedy struck a lone gunman. And then he basically also finds something in her remains that are weird. It's like weird growths and stuff like that may or may not actually be legit. She had a form of cancer that basically took her life. Karsh is also having various dreams about Diane Kruger. As first she looks healthy. She has a medical collar around her. But also she's, rotting away slowly as these things go on. I will say, again, with respect, especially in the first one, my God, Diane Kruger just looks amazing. Absolutely amazing. Terry, by the way, it turns out actually was majorly paranoid and in the conspiracy theories, thinking that the doctors were trying to kill her sister. Trying to implant stuff in her. There's stuff about tracking devices that could be in these corpses. Again, the movie tries to be philosophical and all conspiracy theory, but it just boils down to basically people kind of being assholes, really is what it is. Who broke into the grave? Maury is also in addition to being a talk show host that deals with paternity tests, he is also a tech guy. They can't get through this stuff. He can't get through the firewall of all this stuff because now, Karsh can't, access the data and everything. Becca's data, anybody's data, and clients that had their loved ones buried there are kind of pissed. You don't see that because they couldn't afford to shoot it, but there we are. Maury is also Terry's ex. Also, there is an AI avatar that sounds an awful lot like his ex-wife that's called Honey. It's also voiced by Diane Kruger. That seems to do whatever he wants. He even dresses up like a koala at some point. Like he's a furry. Sick freak. But that being said, Diane looks amazing, is what I noted several times in this. And there were times where, she would actually... There were some good body horror effects where she would lose parts of her as her body was rotting away. And also, there is this talk of this Dr. Eckler that was somebody that treated her. Somebody that has taken off to Iceland. There's stuff about Icelandic servers. That's a hack thing that's been going on for a bit, seemingly. There's also other cemeteries all over, including one in Budapest that ties into a guy named Carolee, who happens to have his wife, Sue Min, played by Miss Holt, who... Again, looks amazing. She's also blind. Started to go blind at 23. And now her husband's dying, and he wants a way to be buried at this particular cemetery. But he has issues. such as dealing with the Chinese. There's a guy named Dr. Zhao that knows all about this, tech company, Chinese tech company that works with the Shrouds. And meanwhile, the honey, which is spelled Hunny, by the way, not like honey, not like a honey pot, not dipping into Diane Kruger's honey pot. Who would want to do that? Who would want to do that? Anyway, nevertheless. So, basically, everyone at the cemetery, maybe was tracked, or maybe not. Maybe they were just targeted. Maybe there was a reason. Maybe it's a vast conspiracy theory. Or it could just turn out to be the most obvious answer, which is that Maury knew about the fact that, his wife basically ended up leaving him, thinking he was a schmuck. And that's a word that's actually used several times, a few too many. She clearly has an attraction to Karsh, and Karsh even noted, you look a lot like your sister. I mean, pretty much because it's the same actress, but I digress. There then is a point where he puts on the shroud to experience what it is like to decompose. We see some 3D stuff, but even the AI says it's not for the living. And it's a shining cloth technologies is the thing. And like the Chinese want to get in on this because, you can keep an eye on people, or you can keep an eye on the dead, but then you have people connect their devices to the dead, and then they can track them and stuff like that. That's something that's floated around pretty much. Maury obviously was one person that was a major suspect because he couldn't get into this into this hacking because he didn't want to, because he was the one that did the hacking. So he just kept making excuses and stuff like that. So the Chinese Dr. Zhao is baffled by some of the stuff, shows him, hey, by the way, all this stuff that you saw, these growths, they're all fake. They're all clearly fake. Or is he in on it? See, they try to do twisty-turny, wrappy-roundy conspiracy theory stuff, but you get to the point where you really don't fucking care. And if I'm not explaining this very well, don't worry. The movie is both simplistic, yet incomprehensible with its descriptions. And then basically he ends up sleeping with Su Min because she couldn't, her husband wouldn't touch her because he's getting sick, and also he couldn't end up really being with his wife in the last few years of her, or last, number of months of her life. She also was spending more time with Dr. Eckler. By the way, it turns out that she actually had a relationship with back when she was 19, and he was a professor and everything. And now suddenly, conveniently, he is seeing her at the end of her life. And maybe she's making excuses for the fact that her body is so damaged, but then he's fucking her even though she's clearly about to die because she never got over him. So maybe that whole plot of Karsh having a plot right next to her to get buried isn't going to look all that great. And he ends up sleeping with Su Min, which, again, Miss Holt, with respect, my goodness. So he keeps dreaming of Becca rotting away. And then Maury, it turns out, was always worried that that Karsh was going to sleep with his ex-wife. Well, before we get any more development on that, we have a phone call with a guy named Elvar that is in Iceland somewhere, I think. With a name like Elvar, he'd almost have to be. Talking about the fact that there are various protest groups going around that are against this technology being used in grave sites. And you kind of get it. I kind of get that, but that's not really explored much. And then basically he ends up, him and Su Min are together for a little bit. Not very long, kind of, not really. And then Becca basically mentions about Jerry Eckel being the former professor and, the ex-lover of, Terry mentions about Becca being the former ex-lover of Jerry, which actually, former ex-lover is a double negative. But Terry gets turned on by conspiracy theories and basically ends up getting railed repeatedly by Vincent, by Karsh, which weird role-playing going on. Again, there are, whatever you're into, I guess, to an extent, but I don't know, like, Diane Kruger's hot, but this is a little bit weird to me. And then Maury basically ended up, he ended up, bringing, like, Karsh over and saying, oh, there's all this crazy stuff going on. And it gets revealed that Maury has done something really goddamn bad. That, Eckler may have not actually gone to Iceland after all. Various things are getting revealed. All in the last, 25 to 30 minutes, by the way. Maury ended up talking to Terry at one point, because Maury had talked while she was recording him on the phone, while he's very much wanting to take his own life, choosing my words carefully. And he's all having crazy conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But he's the one that planted the AI. He is the AI. It's a way to get him back. Because he knew that he wanted to fuck his ex-wife, I guess. That's a bit odd, but whatever. And he basically went rogue. He went insane. I mean, he designed the AI, which isn't really that surprising, but Terry being a freaky freak, I guess, was a bit surprising. And Maury then basically contacts Karsh. This is where it really starts to just lose it. By the way, Tesla must have paid handsomely for this advertising, because Tesla is all over this goddamn movie. So he drives out into the woods, Karsh does, and Maury's missing a couple fingers. He said he hired some Russians, but now the Chinese think that he's a Russian puppet and doing all this, and I don't know. The more I think about it, the more frustrated I get with this movie. The more angry I actually get, because it just feels like it's spinning its wheels for so long that even when it tries to move, it just gets itself in more of a rut. And he mentions about Dr. Zhao. Oh, he showed you this, and all the, designs or all the bumps were actually just 3D models. Well, wait a second. What if he's he's Chinese? He could be in on this whole thing. And then the third act stumbles majorly, is what I point out. And then all the bodies are buried back in. Maury's all freaking out. Had lost his couple fingers, and yeah, Karsh didn't remember that, but then even Terry says, well, yeah, he did. And then there was more talk of conspiracy theories. So she's getting all hot and bothered. And then they check the plot where Becca is buried again. And it turns out somebody is buried in, Karsh's plot. It is Eckler. Eckler never made it to Iceland. Eckler's been buried there the whole time and was shot in the head. Who did it? Maybe Maury did it. No. I think it was Karsh, because he basically just said that, maybe I did, because she betrayed me at the end of her life, and there we go. And maybe he never really truly loved her. Who knows? Maybe he was always an asshole. And then basically Terry says, all these conspiracy theories, you better fuck me quick before the feeling wears off, which again, freaky freak. But then he goes off assuming to get buried at another plot at the Grand Budapest Cemetery Hotel. And then he sees her rotting away like Becca and stuff like that, but I believe it's obvious that he killed her and killed that and just got away with it and did all this stuff. But then there's questions about Maury doing this, and maybe Maury knew what he had done, and yeah, the movie just kind of just stumbled and fell off a goddamn cliff. It was what it was, but I give it. I mean, it's average. It is what it is. It is not something I'm going to remember. I would have given it an F, but at least there was enough potential here and enough stuff that worked to an extent. It would have actually been a solid B had it not stumbled so much. It actually would have been a B plus had it had the strongness of the first act. But that being said, that's it. So agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Rittland. Until we meet again, happy trails to you.